Welcome back for another deep dive. Today, we are going to take a look behind the scenes of something that touches all of our lives, UK logistics in 2025.
Okay.
So we've got this report, the ongoing challenges facing UK logistics companies in 2025. And let me tell you, it was a real eye-opener.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, get ready for some surprises, like there's a looming retirement crisis for truck drivers, and cities are getting really strict about deliveries.
Interesting. Yeah, what's really fascinating is how the report highlights the ripple effect of all these challenges. It's not just about trucks on the motorway, you know? It affects what we buy, how much we pay for things, everything.
Okay, let's start with Brexit. I know we talk about it all the time, but the report makes it clear that it's still causing a lot of problems for UK logistics.
Absolutely. And, instead of just talking about general difficulties, let's get specific. Let's say we have a company called Fashion Forward UK, right?
Okay.
They import fabrics from Italy. Before Brexit, it was pretty simple. But now, with trade agreements constantly changing, it's like a logistical nightmare.
I can imagine.
One month, the tariffs are one way. The next month, they're different. Paperwork changes. There are customs delays. It's a total nightmare for planning and for budgeting.
So basically, Fashion Forward UK is stuck. They either have to accept those costs, which are going up, or they have to raise prices for their customers, which means we end up paying more for those cute tops.
Yeah.
Brexit's impacting my wardrobe. I never thought about that.
It's a great example of how seemingly distant political decisions can directly hit our wallets.
It's true. And, speaking of things hitting our wallets, the report also dives into this big push for green logistics.
Oh, yeah.
Which, everyone wants their packages delivered, in an eco-friendly way. But my guess is that's a lot harder than it sounds.
Way harder. The UK has this goal of net zero emissions by 2050, which is a huge task for the logistics sector. We're not just talking about swapping out a few gas guzzlers for electric vans. We're talking about changing the entire system, like charging stations everywhere, upgrades to the power grid. It's massive.
It's like deciding to switch from a gas stove to an electric one. You can't just buy a new stove. You probably need to rewire your whole kitchen.
That is a fantastic analogy. And it's not just about government rules. Consumers like us, we're demanding those green options.
So logistics companies are kind of caught between a rock and a hard place. They have to invest in all of this expensive green technology to be sustainable.
Yeah.
But they also have to keep costs down for consumers who are already stretched thin.
Exactly. And then on top of all that, we have this whole tech revolution happening in logistics. AI, blockchain, these are buzzwords we hear all the time. But how do they actually change things in the real world?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering too. It all sounds very futuristic, but I need a bit of translation, like from tech speak into, real world stuff.
Sure. Let's start with AI. Imagine a company with, like hundreds of delivery trucks all over the country, right?
Yeah.
AI can look at traffic, the weather, even how drivers are behaving behind the wheel, and use all that to plan the best routes in real time. Faster deliveries, less fuel wasted, lower costs.
So basically, it's all about efficiency.
Yeah.
Okay, I get that. But what about blockchain? I always hear about that with cryptocurrency, but what's it got to do with my package?
Think of blockchain as a digital record that tracks every single step of your package's journey. From the second it leaves the warehouse to the moment it arrives at your door, every little detail is recorded and can't be tampered with. So you have fewer errors. It's way harder for anyone to commit fraud, and if something does go wrong, it's super easy to track back and figure out what happened.
So less chance of my package getting lost in some shipping black hole somewhere. I like that. But hold on a second. All of this amazing tech, doesn't it also make the whole system more vulnerable? Like, what if a hacker can hijack an entire truck full of, the new PlayStation?
Cybersecurity is a big concern. As logistics gets more and more digital, it becomes a bigger target.
Yeah. That's a bit of a scary thought. But speaking of potentially scary things, this report says the UK needs 50,000 more truck drivers.
It's a lot.
Like, how is that even possible? Where have all the drivers gone?
It's a whole bunch of things. A lot of drivers are getting close to retirement age, and there just aren't enough young people coming in to replace them. The job itself is really demanding too, long hours, a lot of time away from home, and more regulations. It's just not as appealing as it used to be.
Yeah, it's not just about knowing how to drive a big truck anymore, I guess.
Exactly. And all of this has some pretty big consequences. Remember back in the pandemic, the empty shelves at the supermarket, delays with your online orders.
Oh yeah, that was a nightmare.
Well, that's partly because there weren't enough drivers to move all those goods around, and we're still feeling the effects of that today.
Wow. I hadn't really connected those dots before.
Yeah.
So we have Brexit headaches, the push to go green, a tech revolution, and now a driver shortage. Is there anything easy about logistics these days?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting. All those supply chain problems we saw during the pandemic, well, they're not over yet. Global events are still really messing things up.
Yeah, trying to buy flour during lockdown was impossible. Empty shelves everywhere. It really made you realize how much we rely on those complicated supply chains, huh?
Exactly. And this report points to things like, geopolitical conflicts and extreme weather, that kind of stuff, as major risks.
Right.
And it's not just about empty shelves. It's about delays, prices going up, and businesses struggling to keep up with everything.
So how are companies even dealing with this? I mean, it sounds like anything can happen these days.
Well, one thing they're doing is something called nearshoring.
Nearshoring, yeah.
Yeah, it basically means bringing production closer to home. So instead of relying on factories that are, on the other side of the world, they're trying to source their goods closer to their customers.
So like maybe that cute top from Fashion Forward UK, instead of coming from Italy, it would be made in the UK. But wouldn't that make it even more expensive? Like higher labor costs and all that?
It's a trade-off. Nearshoring can mean higher production costs, sure, but it also usually means shorter shipping distances. You're not as reliant on global shipping routes, so things can get delivered faster.
So companies are weighing those pros and cons.
Exactly. And they're also changing how they think about inventory. Before, it was all about just in time, only ordering what they needed exactly when they needed it. But now they're adding in some just in case strategy, too.
So like having a backup stash of toilet paper.
Yeah.
Just in case, we have another pandemic.
Exactly. Having extra inventory can help them deal with those unexpected events. But of course, that also means higher storage costs. So it's a balancing act.
It sounds like logistics companies these days have to be like experts in risk management, constantly thinking about cost, speed, and, what if everything just goes wrong?
Yeah, it's tough. And then you add rising costs on top of all that. Like fuel prices keep going up and down, rents for warehouses are going up, new technology costs more. It's a lot of pressure.
So basically, everything is getting more expensive, but customers still want their stuff fast and cheap. Tough spot to be in.
Absolutely. And of course, all those extra costs usually end up getting passed down to us, the consumer. It's like a chain reaction, disruptions happen, costs go up, and our wallets feel it.
Right. It all comes back to us in the end.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, let's talk about that last part of the journey. Getting the package from the warehouse to our doorstep.
Ah, yes. The last mile. That's often the most complicated and the most expensive part of the whole process, especially in busy cities like London.
I can imagine. Try to get a delivery van through rush hour traffic sounds like a nightmare.
Oh, it is. And cities are adding all these new rules, too, to try and reduce traffic and pollution, like those low-emission zones where they restrict which vehicles can be on the roads. That makes things even harder for delivery companies.
So you have more deliveries than ever, but it's harder to actually make those deliveries.
Exactly. And then you add in consumer expectations. People want things delivered faster, they want more options, and they want to be able to track their package in real time.
Okay, guilty as charged. I refresh those tracking pages way too often. But it really is amazing how much we as consumers are shaping the way these deliveries work.
It's true. Our expectations are driving all this innovation. For example, have you heard of micro-fulfillment centers?
I'm not sure I have. What are those?
So imagine smaller warehouses, but they're located inside the city, closer to where people live. So instead of all your deliveries coming from some huge warehouse way outside of town, they could be coming from just down the street.
So deliveries would be faster and you'd have less traffic. Sounds great to me. But what about those delivery drones everyone's talking about? Are we all going to be dodging packages flying overhead soon?
Well, drone deliveries are still pretty new, but I think they have a lot of potential, especially for those remote areas or places that are harder to get to.
It's incredible how much technology is changing logistics. But I also wonder about all the people working in the industry. What happens to their jobs if robots start doing everything?
Yeah, that's a very valid concern. It's something the report talks about, too. As robots and AI get more sophisticated, there's a real chance that jobs will be lost in certain areas.
That's the catch with progress, right? New technology can be more efficient and convenient, but it can also disrupt people's livelihoods.
It's complicated, and it's something that we're all going to have to figure out as automation continues to advance. But even with all these challenges, there's also a lot of really cool innovation happening.
Like what? Give us some reasons to be optimistic.
Well, one thing that really stood out in the report is how companies are using data, to personalize deliveries. Like they're creating a custom experience for every single person.
Oh, wow. Like, how does that even work?
Well, they're analyzing all sorts of things, what we buy, what we like, even our location data to make deliveries more efficient. So they can actually predict what we might order before we even do it and figure out when we might need it. They can even give us different delivery options that fit our schedule.
So, like, if I'm always ordering takeout on a Friday night, they'll have my favorite pizza place all ready to go.
Exactly.
That's pretty cool. But it also feels a little creepy, doesn't it? Like, knowing that companies have all that data about us.
Oh, yeah, for sure. This whole idea of personalization definitely brings up some questions about privacy and how much information we're really comfortable sharing.
It's true. But, okay, let's zoom out for a second.
Yeah.
We've covered a lot of ground here. Brexit, the whole sustainability thing, tech, the driver shortage, global events, costs going up, and, us as customers and what we expect. It's a lot. What's the big takeaway here? What are we supposed to remember?
I think the main point is that, UK logistics is facing a ton of challenges, right?
Right.
But even with all that, companies are still finding ways to adapt, to coming up with new solutions, trying out all this new technology. It's pretty incredible.
So it's not all doom and gloom. There's hope for my packages to arrive on time in the future.
There is. The report doesn't really predict the future or anything, but it shows that the industry is changing. It's being forced to evolve and find new ways to operate.
So what will that look like? Are we going to be living in a world where everything is like super efficient and automated and robots are doing all the work?
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. I mean, we're already seeing robots in warehouses, self-driving trucks are being tested. It's not crazy to imagine that, someday your package might go from the warehouse to your door without a human ever touching it.
Okay, that's kind of blowing my mind. But it also makes me wonder about, what happens to all the people working in logistics?
That's the big question for sure. As automation keeps growing, some jobs will definitely be lost. But it'll also create new jobs that we can't even imagine yet. It's about learning new skills and being ready for the future.
It sounds like we're all going to have to become a bit more tech savvy, even if we're not working in logistics.
Definitely. Technology's changing every industry, and logistics is no exception.
So for our listeners who, maybe aren't experts in logistics, what should they be paying attention to in their everyday lives?
Just notice those little things, like how long does it take for your deliveries to arrive? What kind of vehicles are making those deliveries? What options are companies giving you?
Mm-hmm.
Are you seeing more electric vans? Are there any delivery robots out there? Are you getting those personalized offers and things? It's like a scavenger hunt for clues about the future of logistics.
I love that. It makes it feel more real, like we're all part of this change.
Exactly. And even though logistics can seem really complicated, it's something that affects all of us every day.
It's true. We don't always think about it.
Yeah.
But next time you get a package, just take a minute to think about everything that had to happen to get it to you. All those people, all that technology, the whole system working together.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing when you think about it.
Well, I think we've officially unpacked the world of UK logistics in 2025. It's been fascinating. So many things I hadn't even considered.
And who knows what the next 5 years will bring. It'll definitely be interesting to see how things keep evolving.
That's for sure. Thanks for coming along on this journey with us. And until next time, keep an eye out for those delivery robots.